Well, look at that. What's up, everybody? Guess who I am? I don't even know who I am because I haven't been here for so damn long. My name's Indy. The gentleman right next to me is Mr. J. Powell from Powell Group Consulting, and welcome to Indie Game Business. Today we have Jonathon Troughton, the CEO of Frameplay. Once again, special super guest right here. And what are we talking about? How 2020 led to innovation and a chance to reset in game advertising. That should be interesting.
Well, I mean, I thought we were going to be talking about my amazing sweater that is sitting here glowing, but
it doesn't say shit or
we can talk about that.
Wonderful. They're having a trouble streaming to LinkedIn. Anyway, so I'm sorry. I'm getting pictures and bunches. So Indy, dude, welcome back. We missed you. We're glad you're okay, and you survived your vacation.
Oh my God. It wasn't a vacation for sure. It was not a vacation.
But I am glad you're back. Good to see you again. And
yes. I'm excited for next week. Perfect timing, right?
Well, yeah, excited is one word I have for it. The other one is stress, anxiety, lack of sleep, and all that kind of good stuff. But yes. So yeah, next week is the Indie Game Business, what is now called our Sessions series, Sessions Winter 2020. And we've got like another 30 or some speakers lined up, plus meetings. And we've had a lot of big publishers sign on for meetings. Ubisoft's going to be there. Sony's going to be there. I am really, really excited, but I'm also, also stressed and nervous and hoping everybody has a wonderful event and it's productive. But yeah, everybody go to indiegame.business and you can see the speaker list and the sessions that we've got. And it's the beauty of it is if you're like me and you're quite possibly a little bit burned out on digital events and speakers and sessions, these are not the same speakers and sessions that you've seen at a lot of the other places. I have really tried to get new stuff for us to learn from. It's amazing. And one of those things, it's like, Jonathon is here with us today. Jonathon was a speaker at our last event. And so part of the reason he's here today is because I didn't want to have too many like doubled up, I didn't want everybody to go, it's the same people that talked last time. But he's got really cool stuff to talk about and really good, educational material here for us. So Jonathon, welcome back to Indie Game Business.
Thanks, Jay. And if you're talking about the guys at Sony and Ubisoft, both their teams are fantastic. We always have a lot of fun talking to them. So I'm sure it's going to be beneficial for everybody. But it's been a pretty crazy year. 2020 has been very much a year of transformation in so many different ways. And if you start thinking about, especially relative to our business, as unfortunate as COVID was, it gave, I guess, the entire advertising industry in games a beat to pause and actually think like what's happening, because especially at the start of the year it was just absolute chaos, and not organized chaos. It was literal chaos.
Not the good kind of chaos.
Not the good kind. No one knew what was going to happen. It was this thing going to be uncontrollable and crazy. Everybody hit pause, and from that moment of pause, it actually I guess you could say in conjunction with changes in GDPR, CCPA, and what's coming to CPRA, it just gave everybody a minute to sort of think of like, how are we doing this and how is it going to be done better? What are the things that need to be changed? And then for the entire games industry, not just us in advertising in games, but the entire games industry, all of a sudden was front and center. For everyone, and not just in an advertising sense, but everybody was realizing that games were so embedded in every part and everyone's lives, and that there's a lot more value there, and it should be done right. And I think our message, and I think you'll recall, and others definitely recall, we've always been the preachers of let's do this differently. Let's not just chuck the web assets into games. Let's just not have the same mistakes that have been made of the past and it's taken a decade to rectify them. Let's not do that. Let's do this right from the beginning. And COVID actually gave us the chance and gave people a minute to stop and think, like, how are we going to do this right this time? So I guess that's something I wanted to discuss with you guys is what is doing it right? How how should it be changed? Why are we doing it differently? Yeah, that's kind of like where I want to sort of dig in here. I mean, from your perspective as well, I imagine you've seen a lot of change in the industry across all the different developers. We've seen a massive shift in the way that they're operating, a massive shift in the way they're looking at generating revenue. It'd be interesting to see what you've seen as well, Jay, like from that side of things.
More chaos, and this has very much been the year, I think, across the board for business in terms of, all right, we're going to throw even more shit against the wall than we normally do and see how much of that sticks. But it has. It's been absolutely crazy. I want to pull back a little bit, and I want you to, one, give all of our listeners and viewers an idea of who you are, where you came from, and what you do.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so well, my name is Jonathon Troughton, and I'm the CEO and one of the founders for Frameplay. Frameplay is an intrinsic advertising company for video games. So basically what that means is, I think that we've always had an issue with the terminology of in-game advertising, because for the most part, it's in some vicinity of the game. It's not necessarily part of the world. And we very much took it literally. Intrinsic advertising, in-game advertising, it's part of the world. How do you incorporate really good advertising, quality creative, and actually embed it into part of the world so it doesn't have any disruption to your player? It's actually an additive experience. And from a developer's perspective, now you can start monetizing in a far better way, in a way that advertisers actually want to be associated to. You're able to produce data that's compliant to all these regulatory changes. And now you've got a monetization pathway that you can actually project. It's understandable. And at the very end, it's not some pop-up video. It's not a banner you're accidentally touching with your thumb. And it's all in all a much better experience. So that's intrinsic advertising. We can definitely jump into that somewhere else. But my background and how I got here is actually, I think I mentioned this last time to you as well, Jay. It's actually PUBG of all things. And back when they used to have the Red Bull can in 2017 and they had to remove it. That was the inspiration where we sort of got the core basis of the idea and I guess you would say the philosophy of how we wanted to approach advertising in games so we could do it and make it a lot better. I guess my credibility in gaming goes back to when I was a child, whether it's the Nintendo Entertainment System or all the way going into high school and hosting LAN parties, and you get hold of a secondhand 10100 Switch and you get as many people as you can. And we actually used to max those out at 24 people because that's the biggest the Switches we could find or afford. And we used to play games for 2 days straight and throw candy at each other. So, I mean, from a game perspective, it went from the absolute love of it. It was embedded in my DNA. And I guess you take that all the way through business and how you actually apply the love of gaming into something in the industry and actually moving everybody forward and trying to do the right thing by the gamer, the right thing by the players, the studios. But at the end of the day, we also have to do the right thing by the advertisers because they are paying the bill. So.
Yes, they do. And luckily, because we frequently say, you don't get into this industry because you want to be rich, because that doesn't always happen. You do it because you love games. And if you don't, then you're not going to last. I mean, we can all be making more money doing something else. It just wouldn't be nearly as fun, So
it's fun, exciting, and creating things, especially. That's where it always comes back to, like, I don't know how many times I've said this, the amount of time you spend, not even the mechanics of building a game, but just even the art and the feel. Like it's really, it's a piece of art. You feel really connected to it. So that's why I've always said, like, monetization of these things is absolutely fundamental. You're going to have to do it at some point. But if you can do it in a way that isn't offending your I guess, your vision of how you want to build a game, that's what you should be doing. And that's what we're trying to really foster here, is supporting that creative process.
I had a friend of mine ask me this morning, they said, how do you keep from getting cynical in this industry after you've been doing it for so long and you've looked at all these different pitches and all this other stuff? And I was joking. I was like, I have no idea. I've been cynical for at least 18 of the 20 some years that I've been doing this. But my answer is to do, more stuff like we did the AT&T Unlock Challenge, this week. And so if you aren't familiar with it, if you missed us, where I was on screen with, as my son said, real streamers, we sat down and there were 6 finalists of indie games and companies that were created, by women or by companies primarily, owned by women. And it's things like that. And even just like going to our own events, it's like whenever I get like cynical and I'm so done with this industry, just going and seeing the cool shit that people are doing makes it better. And a lot of people aren't going to want to admit this, but advertising's part of that if it's done right. Now, if you stick a Starbucks in World of Warcraft, that's just not going to happen. But if it's done correctly, it can really add to stuff. And so that's what I like about what you all are doing.
Yeah, it's funny. Like we were, you mentioned the AT&T thing. I did advertising week actually, not too long ago, and that was intense. I had like 6 producers yelling at me because you're not there in person anymore. So you're wearing these headphones and you can hear everyone talking while actually presenting. Really intense. I know how crazy that can be, but I was going to say this, like just even this week, talking to a couple of studios, when you're talking to people, they get really, really, really passionate about how they want to implement things, what they want to build and everything. And you're sitting there going, how do you balance some of this down? Like, okay, guys, I love these ideas, but let's just remember here, you are a 15-person studio, not a 200-person studio. What you want to build is fantastic. It's just going to take a minute. So I think to your point earlier, Jay, when you're around that kind of passion all the time, it's very easy to be dragged back into it. And that's kind of, it's the passion exactly like that sort of drove us around. How do you get this advertising done right? And it's done right by not throwing in the web standards or the IAB web standards into games. Like there's no place for that. There needs to be new standards. That's what we've been pushing. We've been pushing a whole new standard of creative, how it should look, where it should go, the way that creative is handled, even when it's going to a mobile device, where it's going to a PC or a console. We're really excited to be working with some major things that are going to be released next year on console as well. But the whole concept of that was none of this can ever come from the web standards. It needs to be developed as a whole new, I guess, level of creative standard, looks, feels, all this kind of thing, if you're going to be in console titles, if you're going to be in PC titles. So part of our job at the moment is really educating everybody and educating not just the indie studios on how they can do this to really support their studio and their titles growing, but also for the larger studios, educating them on why they should be adopting this more. Everybody's moving the free to play, or I guess you'd say different types of game styles, and no one's paying $90 for a box anymore. Subscription services, I don't see that. Like, you don't play 40, 50 different games. You typically play 1 or 2, and you might play them 2 years. So I'm not going to pay $1,500 for 2 years when I could pay, if I was buying it outright, I could pay $60, and then I've got it for 2 years. The economics of that doesn't make sense. Like, also, let's try and not push Netflix into games. So you start thinking about monetization, especially around that. You've got IAP and you've got advertising. I don't want to see advertising done where it's like forcing me to watch a video. I really want it to be part of my environment. This is where it's like coming back to, like, how do you support the player in the end of the day as well. Like the player is the most important person here, like in all of this. Without the player, you're not going to be advertising anybody, and there's going to be no money anyway. So
let's look at, before we get into like 2021, what we need to do, let's look at this last year. And so with all of this chaos, you know, what changed over the course of the last 12 months that, and this is where we can also get into, you know, what are some of those IB, you know, basics that aren't working anymore, but what were some of the fundamental and the biggest changes that you saw in the last 12 months? And then we'll go from there.
Well, I think the big one that a lot of people probably aren't as concerned about as they probably should be is the deprecation of the IDFAs and what is soon to come as the ADIDs. So for those who aren't familiar with those terms, basically it's the identifying device ID or something like this that comes from Apple or a Android device, which then can then in turn link up to different advertising systems, and it creates, I guess you could say, like a profile map of how you behave and what you do online in a very layman's terms. That being deprecated basically breaks the entire advertising ecosystem entirely. I mean, really, the monetization that is coming through a lot of these original standards forms of, I guess you would say, interstitial videos or banners, that's seriously at risk. Like there is, at the moment, we're working with all of the companies in the background around how they're going to navigate it. We built a totally different way to actually address markets. We're not affected by this, but we're sitting here sometimes talking to groups because you're being told by advertisers, you need to talk to them. We'd like to bring on their data. And we talk to them like, so what's your plan for the deprecation of these IDs? And they're like, we're working on it. We don't really have one yet. And we're sitting here thinking, oh my God, you're like 6 months away from going out of business. You really should be thinking about this. Now, the scary side of that is on the other side, which the game developers aren't being told. The massive publishers aren't being told what's happening here. Now, I'm not going to say that publishers, and especially the larger ones, and even some of the mid-size and small ones, they are thinking about this. They are asking us the question, like, what do we do when this happens? How are we going to change? Should we be looking at doing level design differently? Should we be looking at monetization differently? Yeah, the answer is yes across the board. But like the question is really still out to the entire advertising industry. Like, what are you going to do that is actually compliant to regulatory changes? And that's a big one. Right now, you may or may not be aware, Apple is pushing out requests to a lot of publishers to pass back what privacy elements are being conveyed through SDKs and third-party SDKs, but also to the game. So, I mean, they're digging in deeper and deeper. Now, people, I guess you come back to the question you originally asked is, how has this changed in 2020? Well, a lot has changed, and it hasn't all been because of COVID, but all of these things that were already in progress are really culminating now. And over 2020 and the chaos that COVID created hit pause, and all of a sudden everybody's sort of going, oh, this might be a problem. We might not be making any money unless we do something. And I got to admit, like, they're not moving as quick as they should be. Like, you, as a developer, and you're looking at your monetization, and I'll quote something I heard this week from one of the studios we work with. And he said, I like working with you because I'm a father and I'm a mortgage payer, and you guys are consistent. That is probably going to be front of mind for a lot of developers. How are you going to pay the bills if this all of a sudden stops and you're only addressing it once it's been turned off? So, this year has been a massive change when not just because of COVID, but because of regulatory compliance changes globally. It's been a big change in the way media is being bought because I guess a lot of the existing channels, whether it's digital out of home or it's connected TV or it's sports events or whatever, they're having to reroute these budgets. because they're not able to address those. And they're also realizing they might not have been as effective as they had originally anticipated. They didn't get the data. Like the data that we provide to advertisers far exceeds any of these other channels. So all of a sudden, game advertising, if done right, is definitely looking like a much hotter object for next year, 21.
So I was talking to Indy. So we've already got some questions coming in here. One from Aga, and I hope I got that right. It's difficult to reach top on the Play stores, even if the game is good. Looking for some suggestions to reach more audience for small pocket studios. That's a very good question.
Yeah. That is a good question. Yeah, look, I'm not going to go and say that the Play Store or the App Store, in my opinion, is fair, and those things definitely get reviewed. Like, I had a similar question come up. I was on a call with a BD guys, and they were saying, "Hey, look, we'd love to get some more UA going. We'd love to try and get in there. We're getting reviewed on how our gameplay mechanics sort of feel. What's the player experience? Like, it's, in my opinion, it's definitely not fair. But I believe, and I don't quote me on this, I believe from what we're seeing, I would say that the App Store, Google, etc., they are actually really looking at the mechanics of the gameplay and how they perceive it, and they're rating it differently as well. So I don't know what those actual measurement elements would be, but obviously, as you know, and as you've probably seen with UA campaigns, they're paying ridiculous amount of money to get up on top of that list. Once they get up on top of that list, they're spending millions to be there, and the retention ratio might not even be past day one on a lot of them. So I wouldn't always say UA is the best avenue to go down to get there. Like, really, it comes back to actually staying true to what you're trying to build, really building something that is sticky from like just a, I guess you'd say a organic growth perspective, and have those elements that really hold the retention well within players, and that's going to get you to go up the list. That's from my perspective. I mean, I'm definitely not an expert when it comes to climbing the list in the App Store. I mean, there's some other people I can point you in the direction of that would be able to help you there. End of the day, like, I guess throwing more money at it will get you higher up, but I don't think it's the best way, especially if you start looking at retention rates. And if you want to get past D180, and you want to make something very sticky, and you want to drive the revenue from having them in there, it comes down to, I guess, building quality games as well. It's not just hacking something together. I mean, Jay, like, you can speak to this. The passion and love that you have in this, like, you really want to build something that's really cool. You want to keep adding little features, better art, whatever it may be. And when you do that, I don't know, like, it takes time. It's not overnight.
I mean, and that's actually segues straight into the next question. You know, hyper casual is dominating mobile industry. What's your opinion on which genre is entertaining gamers more? So what should we be building? I mean, no pressure, Jonathan. Don't worry about it.
Okay. This is a good question. I would ask you to think of who plays your games. Hyper casual is, I would say, now being hyper hyped. I don't know if it's as dominant as you would suggest, or maybe the hyper casual now has reached a point where it needs to be broken down into subcategories, and you understand where you're actually seeing the majority of these player bases. So, are people playing when they're going to work on the bus? People playing when they're watching TV? Like, God, I know, for instance, like, I'm sitting here, Victoria, my partner, she sits there all the time playing games or watching TV. Like, I mean, I feel bad for connected TV because this is like such a predominant problem. People are actually playing games or watching TV. Now, what are they playing? Totally depends. And this is where it comes back. Like, I'll reframe the question. Who do you think is a valuable audience? Who do you think, if you're going to monetize these games, whether it be IAP, whether it be advertising, who do you think the audience is? And is the audience capable of buying something, or are they worth advertising to? Because if they are capable of buying something, or they're worth advertising to and they've got disposable income, those profiles of players play certain games. And you can break this down. You can look at, psychological profiling of who plays what types of games. Therefore, how big is the market segment? How many people are going to play that? What does that typically convert to from a cost perspective? And then you can start to protract it, or I guess extrapolating that equation out and say, if I build a game like this, it should in theory suit these types of people, and those types of people monetize via IAP, or they monetize via advertising. If they monetize via advertising, they are a very desirable audience and they pay a lot higher to reach them. So I don't know, that kind of went a bit off topic, but hyper casual to me these days is no longer Candy Crush only. And that's what it was. I think really the definition of hyper casual was Tetris, anything like the Candy Crush kind of segmentation of games. But now it's definitely different things. It's whether you're playing a BMX game, whether you're playing Angry Birds, whether you're playing Boom Beach, whether you're playing a ton of different things, like whether it's golf or any, the way they're played, I think is going to sort of start eating away at what that definition of hyper casual is.
I love the fact that we've got to the point in the industry that we have psychological profilers that will help you.
Hey, it's actually
crazy, but I mean, yeah,
actually understanding like who and what, who and where are playing these games. Like, why do they do what they do? Where do they go? Where do they shop? Like, actually understand who your audience is and what you're building for. I think the days of just building a game and be like, well, let's see what happens here. Like, if you're building for passion and love, then build it however you want. If these questions do feel a little bit monetization driven, if you're building to monetize and that's where you're going, you really have to know who you're selling to and who your players are.
All right, so you want to ask this, or I'll ask this next question here from Oblivious Games. Why not, this is talking about advertising in games, why not just keep it simple and do the billboard way, simple ads in city games and racing games?
How we do that? We do that, and we do that better than all. The technology we built around that, like, we're first in class technology. We have the total understanding of what's happening in these environments, and we can convey that value to advertisers. That's the reason why we can charge more. We do that better than any. But yeah, like, I completely agree. I think there needs to be, and this is when we're getting into really good conversations with developers and we're looking forward on the other elements that we can support and do for them. I always say, let's start with the basics. You need to learn how to walk before you can run. So if you want to get to that, like, yeah, billboards, definitely 100%. I'll support that every day of the week.
Well, I mean, that totally makes sense too, because in movies you see, like, okay, we're watching American Horror Story, right? We're watching, that's what we're binge watching right now, and there's always somebody with an Apple laptop open. Bam, it's right there.
It's, if you want to think of it that way, it's kind of, well, it's like product placement, billboards. I think the saying billboards is maybe a little bit of a cheap shot at how it's being done now. We really drive for creativity, especially with advertisers. We are really asking them to step it up. This is no longer just a photo with Arial font. We want them to actually build creative. We have them build creative, whether it's cartoon stylized, whether it's photorealistic, and actually aligning to those environments and making sure that it's seamless and, from an experience perspective for the players. I mean, that's what you have to do. Like, it wasn't simple to build these things, but when you come down to it, definitely billboards, or however you want to define it, like ad spaces inside the game, very solid step. It's not something that's going away. It's going to be there for a while, whether it's sports, racing, open world environments, like shooters you can do. I got to admit, like, shooters from a advertiser perspective, if you want to, there's a concept called the Overton window. And the Overton window speaks to acceptable concepts, theories, practices, even. And where we are with shooters and advertising is we're a little bit misaligned. The majority of major advertisers, which are spending in excess of 6 figures a month with us anyway, they're not really going for shooters. We have to be more selective. We have to be really defined and finding the right. I guess, and this comes back to my original question. We have to really find the right audiences for the brands. While we might not have some of every Fortune 500 company wanting to go there, there's still a lot that want to go into the shooter category, but it is a little bit more refined. And we always like to give that guidance.
All right, let's do this next question. Another question by Aga Khan. Any opinion on the Chinese gaming market and Asian gaming market?
Asian gaming market is amazing. Some of the innovation you see there is really cool as well. It's actually crazy. And now I'm very fortunate to be in a position where I guess to see a lot of cool new technology that's coming out that everybody else doesn't get to see for a while. New games. I mean, this weekend I'm playtesting games that haven't been released to anybody.
Which ones? Where do we get them?
It's a pretty cool position to be in. Yeah, look, the Chinese market is, how do I say this? It's delicate on your entry. Let's put it that way. I wouldn't just think in a cavalier manner you can just run in there. There's definitely more controls. Huge value though, and if you navigate that correctly, there's immense value to be had there.
All right, here's a question from Mr. Dev. Dev's in the house.
Yes. I don't know if anyone ever can see it, but it's fantastic.
The lights are what make it for sure. What is your opinion on in Gacha games in the mobile market? And as example, they look for more successful in Eastern market like Japan. Do you think there's a trend that might grow here after Genshin Impact?
To be honest, I'm not an expert on that. I probably don't know enough really to speak to that. What I have seen though, and there's actually a couple studios in the Bay Area. Well, studios, I think they're really more like offices and extensions from the Asian region, trying to convert a lot of these games that are developed predominantly for APAC and Asia, and actually convert them for Western consumption. I think it's a little bit harder than people originally anticipated. It's not just, hey, let's translate it to English and it'll work. There's such deep-seated cultural differences between game design predominantly in Asia, and stepping outside of things like PUBG or what's it called, Free Fire and all that kind of thing. I think that's like, from an FPS perspective, that's just an accepted play style globally. But yeah, a lot of those games in that region don't necessarily translate that well to Western culture, and vice versa. I mean, unless you're talking like soccer or something like this, and then it's global in nature.
Wait, and Australian just referred to it as soccer. I'm just a little confused.
Oh yeah, so I'll probably be murdered after this because it's clearly football. For anybody listening,
holy crap!
In Western Europe, I meant football, and now I'll be murdered in the US.
So, I mean, one, we've got like tons of questions coming in here, which is good. But I'm curious. I mean, so are there major trends? Are there major things that people need? I mean, because you are seeing stuff that's out there before the rest of us do. You know, that is one of the perks of being in this industry, is we get to see cool stuff before a lot of people do.
Yeah.
If you're sitting down and you're a developer right now, you know, somewhere mid-tier, we're not talking about, you know, King or somebody like that who's got multi-billions to chunk into this stuff. What's your strategy for 2021?
Well, and this comes back to what I was saying before. Like, I think if you're an organization, let's put it this way: if you are relying on revenue from your game, whether it be from venture capital, whether it be, like I said before, you might be a parent and you have kids or a mortgage. If you have a reliance on revenue and you're not charging an upfront amount, or you are even thinking about adding additional incremental revenue, because that's the funny thing here. The way we are doing this, we have had comparisons next to our ad creative being put in versus a game that was just paid upfront. And there's elements like in a sports game, you cannot tell the difference. There's absolutely no way you can tell the difference. So if the developer is not charging $60 but charging $20 or $30 for their game, then they want to add in incremental revenue, and if anything, they're only adding to the experience for the player. Why wouldn't you do it? The player's not going to be mad. The player's not even going to, in that instance, the player's not going to know. Yes, you have to disclose that you're doing it 100%, but provided you're creating a better experience, why wouldn't you do it? But back to the question, like, if you are relying on revenues from these games, you really have to think about how you're going to be monetizing at 21. Now, IAP is always going to have the cloud of, is this gambling? Are you allowing children to gamble? I'm no expert at that, but I know that there's definitely a lot of regulatory changes coming there. That's going to change. So advertising's always been a staple in every corner of commerce globally. Advertising has always been the cornerstone of these things. It's not going away. How it's done, how data and privacy is handled, that's going to change. Data and privacy needed to be changed. It needed to be done right. It needed to be, I guess, the power of you being able to have that information shared should be in the power of not necessarily the groups that nobody can see, but maybe the publisher, maybe just the individual player. So that's changing, and we definitely support that. But as a developer and a studio, you should be thinking, if I'm going to be using IAP, what's happening? How am I going to do it? What does that look like? If you're using advertising, look, GDPR, CCPA, the IDFA is going away. ADID hasn't been announced, but there's going to be changes there. Those are some serious changes with some serious ramifications, and you should be asking questions like, could we even look at implementing different styles of advertising anyway now? Like, let's just level up. Let's go forward. Let's do something better for the players. And while we're doing that, we're going to replace monetization systems.
So you touched on something there that I want to draw attention to, because I do think it's one of the biggest myths out there for developers. And you said if you got IAPs in there that are enhancing player experience, the players aren't going to be mad. And you're dead right. And I think there is still the stigma with a lot of developers. It's like, oh my God, if I put any kind of in-app purchasing or ad in my game, then I'm just going to get flamed. Well, I know I did the research. I literally did research for this for a client. If you, as the developer, are providing a value to the player, they not only don't get mad, they want it. And so,
not overdoing it. I think with all things, in moderation is the real key here. And it's the same thing we do with, like, when we're working with studios and guidance on how they should be implementing ad spaces, where they should go, what they should look like. Are they dynamic and changing? Like all of these different elements, we sort of say, like, it's all in moderation. You can overdo it and have it a negative experience as well. Don't underdo it. Don't going to make any revenue. There's a balance. But even with IAP, don't have 10 prompts to buy something when you're
yes.
I mean, that is going to be, once I go beyond two, I'm like, okay, guys, I'm not.
Let me clarify. If you do it, and you're
definitely. Look, the best way to look at it is, and you can boil it down to this: is it disruptive to the flow or the gameplay? Is it disrupting core loop mechanics? You know, you have one offer for IAP, two offers for IAP at some point in the game. No, it's not. Same thing for us. Like, if you build the ad units into the environment, then they make sense and they're actually part of the environment, it's not affecting it, that's fine. But I'm also not going to put 100 ad units in like one little area of a map, that's disgusting. Like we wouldn't even approve the game, to be honest. Like we review these things, and if people are having malicious practices and they're trying to do things that are wrong by the player, we don't even approve it. We say, then again, like we have never had anyone do that, because we are very clear that our whole mission here is to actually provide a really steady, sustainable revenue source while maintaining the gameplay experience. So the same thing I'd say for IAP, like don't put in 15 prompts. Like you're wondering where your attention's going. It's that.
Sorry, Dan, I'll let you get back to the question, but I saw this from Div coming in. Get to the McDonald's, save the Coca-Cola seller, and you will defend him against the zombies until he gets to the Uber car. Yeah,
that's a bit. Yeah.
Excellent.
That's going too far. Exactly that. Like that's still going too far, in my opinion. You're starting to talk about gamification of advertising, and it's never a thing I thought would work. There was actually an episode of Silicon Valley where they used like voice cues on the microphone to actually insert things in there. It was like a medieval village, and it had like travel and jets and everything flying around. I thought it was hilarious, but that's exactly the abomination I'm trying to avoid.
Oh, and apparently Carrie's watching now. Because we're getting recommendations on questions to ask for you. Hi, Carrie.
Yeah, here's what she says. We just released a brand lift study from ComScore. Plus 46.4 points like the brand sponsorship of the games, and plus 32 points fit as a sponsor. Can you ask that?
What a unique and unexpected question.
That is really strange. It's strange that that she's watching this. Okay, so
get back to work.
Well, yeah. So basically, I'm sitting here talking too much crap with you.
Rein it in, Jonathan.
All right. Okay, so I'll rein.
You're the boss. Come on.
Look, I had a flashy shirt on. I thought this would be okay. Look, we just did there was a very recent release of a brand lift study that we did with ComScore, and unfortunately, we're not allowed to say who it was. But what we saw in this study basically was insane. We had it was to the point that it was a 46-point lift in brand appropriateness as a sponsor inside a game. The way it's delivered, how we were doing it. They would normally see a good lift would be between 2 and 6 points. We had 46. We had double digits across the board. Let's suffice to say that the brand was very happy with how that performed. And they'll be continuing to spend money in our platform and actually embracing our methodologies. But this is exactly, and actually a funnier point was, it was a 26-point lift on intent to purchase. Now, if you've got a massive increase on intent to purchase products and the way it's being delivered and their experience, you can imagine where this goes as a medium for spending money for advertising if it affects their bottom line. So,
good answer.
Okay, let's get back to user questions now, since we have this interruption into the. You're the boss, Jonathan. You just say, "Hey." Okay, here we go. Let's see. Oh, and another one from Aga Khan, looking for some suggestions for financial spending for small indie game dev studios, like from where the funds need to raise at starting phase and where to spend them in the initial phase. Interesting question.
I feel like that's not a question that can be answered with the amount of time we have remaining. Look, funding, I guess raising venture for games has always been interesting. I think you would be happy to know, whether you're aware or not, right now is a fantastic time because there's a lot more attention coming onto games. If you have a really well thought out plan, you've got et cetera, everything lined up. Like right now is, I don't know, Jay, you're across a little bit of this as well. Right now, for raising money or even coming up with concepts around new games, new game technology, supporting technologies for the game industry, this is as good a time as ever. Next year for 21, I dare say, is even going to be better. I'd say 21 is going to be phenomenal for gaming.
I hear it both ways right now. I hear, on one side, I hear investors are peeling back because of the, this is like they're peeling back because of the economy, but the economy is exploding and the game industry is exploding even faster than everything else. So I do see it, but I see it, like I said, I see it both ways. But honestly, and this is like my selfish, I've been doing this for 20 some years opinion here. I think if you're an investor and you're not looking to intelligently invest in this industry, you are out of your fucking mind right now.
Yeah. Then, I mean, year-on-year growth for games, if I recall correctly, was around 20-ish something percent prior to COVID. Next year, the latest report I saw was they were expecting it to be more like 37%. That's a pretty big jump. But I wouldn't say it's equally distributed. Money that's flowing into this space right now is 100% not equally distributed. And it's not like because you're in gaming, you're going to get money thrown. I think venture capital as well has kind of lost its way. And the way it's done in the States, I mean, globally, really, like the States really leads how venture capital sort of, I guess, flows. But there's been a fundamental shift, I think, in how it's done. That's another topic. I'm not going to get into that right now. But yeah, look, money for games, I think it now is obviously a dead time. You're not going to do anything in December or January. It's just not.
That's not true anymore.
I don't think so, man. No one. Look, anyone in finance, the second you hit that, what is it, like the end of the second week of December, like good luck. You're not getting anything to the middle of January.
I'll give you that side. It used to be the minute the 1st of November hit, the industry pretty much shut down for 2 months.
You go into a code freeze.
Yeah. I mean, it was crazy, but now it's, in terms of, now, like I said, I'm not looking at like investment side, but in terms of, publisher action and, picking up new titles, looking at new titles, it used to very much be, it's like, okay, listen, we're going to cool down in December and we're going to reevaluate everything and we're going to start back up in January. But it's not the case on that side anymore. And especially since, now we've got digital events going on. And there were so many, yes, I know I run a digital event, right there behind me. But in October, there were so many of them that you could have literally gone to one every day and not gone to the same one twice. And so you see a lot of that momentum carrying on. Now, if you're at contract phases, it's going to take a little longer to get through the lawyers. Yes, because they're all on vacation too. But it's not a situation where the industry doesn't shut down like it used to anymore.
Yeah. Well, yes and no. I think you've still got the supporting elements that, like to your point, the lawyers, they're not going to be there. But I think there's also another thing that's happening, which is a massive consolidation of holdings in the gaming industry at the moment. So the bigger groups are really buying a lot of the smaller entities, whether they be studios, whether they be supporting technologies. There's going to be a shift in the way that it's fundamentally done, I'd say, over the next 18 months, just purely because of the consolidation. But yeah, I mean, to your point, with the way things are currently done remotely, like throughout this year, we have multiple offices to begin with. So we are already partially used to doing remote work in some form, even though each of the individual teams were doing work in their own offices. So when we all had to go and work from home, it wasn't such a big deal. I still think, depending on what you're doing, especially in the R&D space, being in office is far more beneficial. But for the games sector specifically in this, the way it's being done currently, like the work habits have been affected a little bit as well by COVID. Probably not as much as other areas though. So going into 21, and if we tie this back to, the original funding question, it will be the investors are looking for some key metrics that they typically would, but now I think they're a little bit more lenient because there's a bit of hype around the gaming industry and where it's going to go. And now they're realizing how big it was. And it's the surprising part is they're realizing it's not a 15-year-old boy in a basement, and they're realizing
shocker.
Yeah, no, like they're only just working this out now.
It's crazy how that is still such a stigma.
It's insane that we still hear that all the time, and we're like, no, the average age is 34, and it's
equal. If not, it's more. I mean, I had this rant yesterday with somebody, and it's like AOC was on Among Us last week with like 6 or 7 other streamers, and the first time she did that, it was all over the news, and everybody's, all the other politicians are jumping all over her because it's like, well, you could be doing something. Why do you spend so much time playing video games? My wife's like, well, why do you spend so much time playing golf? But she's out there, and I laugh, and it's like, yeah, y'all can criticize her all you want, whether you believe her politics or not, it's irrelevant. She's just live in front of millions of people, talking honestly, giving feedback, relating, even going into how playing competitive League of Legends prepared her for the toxicity in Congress. And I'm like, this older generation, 60, 70, 80-year-old congressmen don't get that our generation, the generation that is now in their 50s, we grew up playing games. It's not something evil. It's not something just for kids.
No, but it sounds very much like, to me, she's reading the data that's coming out from the ESA, because I think off the top of my head, it's something like 75% of people who play games intend to vote. Now, if you ask me, that's a really smart move, because that's an authentic connection to voters and something that they can understand. I mean, God, look at the political landscape in the country at the moment. Like, trying to relate to somebody that's speaking in that sort of position, pretty difficult for the average person. But if you're somebody sitting here playing the game that you play, you're building connections and bonds that's very hard to dismiss.
Yeah, I caught a bit. I didn't watch all of it, but I watched her for a little bit. And the thing that stood out to me is she genuinely does play games. That's because you get a lot of them that have realized this is like, wow, there's a lot of people playing this Fortnite thing. Let me talk about Fortnite, but they can't talk about it intelligently. It's like you said, they're reading bullet points from the ESA.
Yeah, you have to back up. You say, anybody who ever questioned, I've always had this like wish. It's never happened, but always had this wish that someone questions my authentic nature in games. I'm like, come and play a game of Call of Duty with me. Come and play Command & Conquer. Anything. I dare you.
Yeah, that's it. When she was going into exactly which character she played in League and how she played them and why she got in trouble with the other team, and I was like, all right, that's legit. That's not shit you just like read in a summary. Yeah. Anyway, bottom line is, it's not just 15-year-old boys playing video games anymore. It's all of us. That's but that it's one of the things that I always like to mention to developers. Sometimes developers get really wrapped around the axle on, is there going to be a market for my game? And the same is true for. This is
also like where I was coming back to before. Like, if you are going to rely on the monetization of a game, and you are relying on, you should be doing this even if you're not relying on that. Like, who are you selling this to? Like, how much can a 15-year-old kid afford? Like $100 game? So it's not them buying it, it's the parents. Like, what's the mechanics of that? So if you translate that and you say, if we're going to be monetizing by advertising our IAP, what type of games do the people who actually, or the audiences are of value, who are either buying the IAP or are of value to advertisers, and who and where and what? I mean, this is things that we help all of our clients with. So how do you actually address those audiences? Then what type of game am I building? What type of mechanics am I building into my game? Understand who you're selling this to, or understand who you intend to play the game. Like, if you are just making a game for the love of it, I absolutely support that. And if you don't have any desire to monetize through those methods, fine. That's totally fine. But I think what happens more often than not is, most developers start out with the idea that they love, and then they have an idea in back head, one day we'll make some money from this. But they don't get to that down. They sort of build it and everything, and they're like, okay, now we have to make money from this. How do we do it? And it's like, well, there's a lot of things that don't align to any of the avenues that you want to do. Like, you want to use advertising, cool, but you built a game that has a very small player base that won't, not even a player base, but a very small like section of the market that may not be able to be marketed to. So advertising is not your solution. It might be IAP. But that's to my point. Like, you really need to think about these things as soon as possible. And that's why we encourage when games are being designed and they are going to make them free to play, which, you know, culturally, most games are going to be free to play by 2 years from now. It would be surprising to see games you have to pay up front for.
Oh, no.
More than $19. Quote me on that. More than $19. If you were paying more than $19 2 years from now for a game up front, I will be surprised. Look at this.
I don't think you're going to get companies like Take-Two and Activision to fully pull. I mean, Take-Two's already said that they don't believe subscriptions are a thing, and I don't 100% disagree with that.
Yes.
But
Call
you're still so wrapped around the axle on not just premium, but premium plus IAP.
Sure, but go look at Call of Duty Warzone and tell me where the majority of their revenue comes from.
I haven't played that because I suck. Listen, one, their install was drastically too big.
What do you mean? It's 200 gigabyte. What's wrong with that?
Yes, exactly.
Got two. Like, what are you doing?
I will be honest, and I'll put this out here. I am running on a potato that's like 5 years old, and I do desperately need a new machine. I don't have 200 gig to drop on Warzone. So, I mean, tell me, where's their spending coming?
It's coming from IP.
Well, yeah, and that's like you see Fortnite and a lot of the other, trust me, I know that part because my 9-year-old is like, Dad, are you going to get the battle pass? Dad, there's this new skin I have to have today. And I'm like, no. So,
but then again, they have the luxury of 2,000 developers. So,
yes, that's very true. But I don't know that we're going to completely get rid of premium.
Yeah.
Because I agree. Yes, they are making a ton of money on it. There's an argument to be made there all the time, but I still, how does, well, I was getting ready. I just shot down my own argument right there. I was going to say, how does Valhalla do that? But shit, there's IAP in that too. So, I mean, there's been a lot of chat in the chat about Genshin Impact, and that's one. And I'll admit I haven't played it yet, but everything I hear, it's like free to play Zelda Breath of the Wild. That's crazy. And if you're able to monetize a game that big, that open world, that type of game that way, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to argue. We could be in for a paradigm shift. But I also have seen this industry go through so many cycles where, everybody jumps to one side of the boat and then somebody goes, oh, wait a minute, hold on, we can go back to the other side of the boat. It's like I'm seeing publishers that are going back to retail now.
Yeah.
And we thought retail was dead 5 years ago, but
yeah. And look, I'm not going to say it's all because of free to play that's going to make that shift. I mean, there's other influences in the market as well, whether it be Stadia or subscription services that you can just, what is it, xCloud, all these kinds of things. Like, there's other things influencing this. It isn't just the free to play pressure that's on them to remove these large upfronts. But with all things, anything commerce, if you can remove the barriers to entry, which is for most that large amount up front, you can get more people. So you get more people, and how do you monetize them?
All right. Well, let's wrap it up with we got one more question from Aga Khan right here. What are your thoughts on upcoming new consoles? VR, AR, mixed reality, PlayStation, Xbox, and the Omni console. Which one will future? Omni consoles like PlayStation, 16-bit, whatever.
I'll give you a very diplomatic answer because
all of them.
I work in some capacity with several names there. But look, as everybody is aware, and I mean, I know some people at Sony at the moment. Any employee at Sony is probably literally the most important, popular person on the block, which you cannot get enough of the actual devices, and there's no PlayStations available. So, look, I'm not going to say which one's going either. Obviously, Sony has had a very good release. But I think with all things like this, you need competitors. Otherwise, you get stagnant and progress just kind of dies and you don't get any new developments. And I think the next gen consoles are fantastic, but I definitely don't want to see it drop down to this being one player. You need Xbox. Basically, like half of my friends who play Call of Duty, I play with them on Xbox on crossplay. But yeah, you need all of them really. And I actually like to see some more coming out. But as you know, now speaking from a game developer side, the more delivery platforms you have, the more QA. It's a hassle. It's a hassle even for us. Like, you know, we test every single thing we release. Every time we release a new SDK version or anything, like it's going to be tested on every single device. You know, I don't want to see too many added. So
it is. I mean, it's, and I think we're getting to a point where there's enough differentiation in it, because I mean, earlier in the year I had a buddy of mine that's like, which one are you going to get, the PlayStation or the Xbox? And I'm like, I have no idea yet. Don't ask me hard questions. And he's like, well, this one's got 14 more teraflops. Started rattling off technical stuff. And I was like, and this guy used to work in the industry.
Yeah.
And I said, show me over. I said, these technical specs get thrown out every single console generation. Show me a game that came out at launch that any of that shit mattered one iota, because nobody knows how to optimize it and use the system to the best of its ability anyway. And so one of the best analogies I've heard is, you know, the Xbox is the Netflix and Sony is the premium cinematic theater experience. And I get that part.
Well, it's funny, like, I don't know how much time we got left, but there is very much different silos and camps where you could say people who play PlayStation don't go and buy Xboxes. People who play Xbox don't go and buy PlayStations. There's a reason for that. And they've been raised with it and they're culturally
you get the fanboy camps.
You do, but they usually don't cross over. They stay in their own ecosystem. And the types of games don't necessarily come out on both platforms as well. So they obviously have a certain pooling of player base or people or audiences that see these things. And this is, again, where it comes back to my other comments around, like, if you're monetizing, you know, understand who your audience is in advertising. It's the same thing here. Like with Xbox, PlayStation, they're two totally different camps. Like if you want to reach that audience segment, you're going to have to do it on PlayStation. If you want to reach that one, you're probably going to have to do it on Xbox, or maybe you can do both on PC, but at a limited volume. And again, if you're using console, you know, you're only going to be reaching North America, Western Europe, and maybe Australia and New Zealand. The rest of the world typically plays on PC or mobile phone. So how are you reaching these people?
That's exactly, you do it from the advertising side. We do it from the
I do it from
marketing side. It's like, yeah, we absolutely sit down with everybody from developers to media and say, okay, who do you want to hit? That's not only going to define your genre, but it's going to define your platform and your monetization model. Because we are long past the, I'm going to make a game and sell it on Steam. You know, it's way beyond that at this point.
Yeah.
So yeah, we are running out of time here a little bit. So, but Jonathon is in our Discord. So I don't know how long he'll be there today, but you can feel free to badger him with all kinds of questions. You know, once we go offline, and you can find us at discord.gg/indiegamebusiness. Any closing thoughts, Jonathon? You filthy animal.
Look, honestly, no closing thoughts other than the fact that, you know, as Frameplay was made to support the developer community, whether you're big or small, you know, if you are looking at using monetization or advertising as monetization, we're more than happy just to talk and actually help you through understanding how it will be done and what can be expected.
And it is. You have repeated what I say constantly. If you want to make games as a hobby or as an art form, more power to you. We support you. Do it. We'll help you. But if you want to make this your career and your real job, you've got to look at it as a business. And part of looking at it as a business is how you can, holistically and ethically and, integrate ads and solutions like this. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't, hamstring and piss off your players, but it also generates revenue for you, man. So I appreciate it, Jonathan. You're one of the great folks we can get on here and have an honest to God, serious conversation with. And it's not just, you should do this. It's like, yeah, we appreciate it. Man.
You still have to go and buy another hard drive so we can play some Call of Duty.
I know, I do. It's on the list, It's like
on the shit list. Maybe
I'll
Santa
get it
will
at some
bring
point.
Christmas, right?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if I've been good enough for Santa to bring me anything. We'll find out. So, Indy, you want to do what you haven't done in a while? Run through all the cool stuff to know and then play us out.
Oh, sure. So, yeah, check out our Discord, discord.gg/IndieGameBusiness. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter, facebook.com/IndieGameBusiness and twitter.com/BusinessIndie. And you can listen to all of our past podcasts. And I don't even know how many there are now. It's
over
crazy.
150 YouTube. And because I know this because we organized them this week.
So on YouTube, right. So we got anchor.fm/IndieGameBusiness and you just Google Indie Game Business.
Well, it's YouTube/C/IndieGameBusiness or something like that. But yeah, seriously, you can go there. We're we're redesigning the Discord. But if you want to know just simply about how to market your game, we have an entire playlist full of it. And soon you'll be able to type, whatever marketing in our Discord, and it will spit that playlist out for you. So we're working on quality of life improvements back here behind the scenes.
And with blue backlighting, right?
Yes.
LEDs.
I mean, I got this whole, look at this, man. I got a big old fancy remote. I can make any kind of color I want to make. It's all good.
All right.
I'm high end now, baby.
Up in, baby. All right. Excellent. So thank you so much, Jonathan. And thank you guys for hanging out. And yes. Hey, next week, starting on Tuesday, we've got the Indie Game Business online conference sessions. That's
Sessions Winter 2020. Go check it out. I can't even rattle through all the great speakers and talks that we've got, but I guarantee you we've got talks that you ain't heard anywhere else.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. There's 22 of them that's posted on Meet to Match right now.
That's not even all of them.
Okay.
That's why we have to go off the air because I have to put more of them in.
Okay, yeah, you're gonna have to do that so I can start getting them up there because I gotta get them all ready, all that stuff. I have a bajillion things to do today. Yeah, thank you guys so much. And we will see you next week.
All right. Thanks again, Jonathan. And thanks, Carrie.
If you're there, get back to work.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.